Well, Holmes, are you going in? I think I detect impatience in our driver's whistling.
What you detect is merely lack of musicality. You'll be patient enough for the fare and his tip.
And Inspector Hopkins? He'll want to know what you've discovered. I'm rather curious myself.
You'll hear it all, Watson. In good time, in good time. As to Hopkins, he must learn patience, as I've tried to teach him before.
But he's in there now, convinced he has solved a most brutal crime, and yet you know he's wrong.
Do you think, Watson, that in my career I can ever have done more harm by discovering a criminal than was done by the crime itself?
Perhaps.
I think so.
Unavoidable at times, surely.
Unavoidable, as I wonder. Might it not be better, in such a case, to play tricks with the law of England rather than with my own conscience?
You mean conceal evidence?
Yes, Watson. I suppose that is what I mean.
The Abbey Grange by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Dramatized for radio by Robert Forrest. With Clive Merrison as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson. And featuring Penny Downey as Lady Brackenstall and Andrew Wincott as Inspector Hopkins. The Abbey Grange.
To understand how Sherlock Holmes could be driven to consider toying with the law of England, we must go back some few days from that troubling conversation outside Scotland Yard in the winter of '97. Debating with himself the conflicting demands of conscience and legality, Holmes had sat withdrawn and huddled in a corner of our cab, his brows drawn down, face half hidden by the brim of his hat and his upturned collar. But on the morning the case began, distressingly early on a bitterly cold morning, his face was eager, his eyes bright, lit by a candle in his hand as he tugged at my shoulder.
Watson, come on, Watson, wake up.
What is it?
The game's afoot. Up you get.
What game? What time is it?
Almost 6:30. Our cab will be here any moment.
6?
Into your clothes now, quickly.
Holmes, I'm not leaving out of bed at 6:30 on the coldest morning of the year without some explanation.
Here's your explanation. A note from Inspector Stanley Hopkins. He has a murder for us. The clever fellow.
Here, Watson. Read it aloud. The effort at concentration may help to awaken your brain.
I am awake. Not happy to be so, but I am.
It's from Marsham, in Kent, Abbey Grange.
Oh, I see. Written at 3:30 a.m.
It's admirable precision from Hopkins. Yes. My dear Mr. Holmes, I should be very glad of your immediate assistance. Now you go on.
In what promises to be a most remarkable case.
He's called me in 7 times before, has Hopkins. Yes, on each occasion, his summons has been entirely justified. Let's hope it's so again.
It is something quite in your line, except for releasing the lady. Releasing the lady?
Except for releasing the lady, he will see that everything's kept exactly as he found it. Yeah, well, the fellow does try to follow my methods.
I beg you not to lose an instant, as it is difficult to leave Sir Eustace there. Yours faithfully, Stanley Hopkins. Very coherent, is it?
The note does show considerable agitation. Most promising.
No mention of murder?
Sir Eustace, I'll wager, is the victim. The body is left for our inspection.
Oh, well, promising indeed.
Now, what else might be deduced from that note?
Well, seems we're moving in high life. Crackling paper, E.B. monogram, coat of arms, picturesque address.
Not bad, not bad. Yes, well, you're almost awake. And the murder, of course, was committed before 12 last night.
How can you tell that?
By a knowledge of train times and simple reckoning. Local police called in, they communicate with the yard. Hopkins goes out there, he wisely sends for me a fair night's work. Yes, I do think we'll have an interesting morning, yes. And like the other cases Hopkins has put our way, this one will almost certainly find its way into your collection. You do have some power of selection, Watson, which atones for much I deplore in your narratives.
Not that again.
Yes, that again. Your fatal habit of looking at everything from the point of view of a story instead of a scientific exercise.
It's too early.
You ruin instructive and even classical demonstrations by imbuing them with spurious glamour.
Being dragged from bed at an unearthly hour to inspect some murdered Sir Eustace holds little glamour for me. Why don't you write them yourself?
I will.
You will?
Yeah. Yes, I propose to compose a textbook which will focus the whole art of detection into one volume.
A runaway success, I'm sure.
Yes, but that will be in my declining years. Here we are. Charing Cross. Next stop, Chislehurst. and from there to Abbey Grange.
In the train to Kent, my humour improved very little, as I had to endure further diatribes from Holmes on my tendency to romantic elaboration. A less romantic mind than mine that morning would be difficult to imagine. From Chislehurst, a drive of a couple of miles through narrow country lanes brought us to a park gate, which was opened by an old lodge-keeper, whose haggard face bore the reflection of some great disaster. The avenue ran through a noble park, between lines of ancient elms, past a frozen lake, and ended in a low, widespread house, pillared in front after the fashion of Palladio. The central part was evidently of a great age and shrouded in ivy, but the large windows showed that modern changes had been carried out, while one wing of the house appeared to be entirely new. And there, to meet us in the open doorway, was the youthful figure and alert, eager face of Inspector Stanley Hopkins.
Mr. Holmes, I'm so glad you were able to come. And you too, Dr. Watson.
Hopkins? Good of you to think of us, Hopkins.
But the thing is, the information...
Sir Eustace Brackenstall's dead, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah,
but
murdered,
you see,
I take it?
Yes, his head knocked in with his own poker.
Indeed. Well, scene of the crime first, eh?
Well, the thing is, Mr. Holmes, it's rather... Well, if I had my time over again, I shouldn't have troubled you.
How so?
There isn't much left for you to do. I know who the murderers are.
Well, now, is this remarkable speed and efficiency, or another instance of your losing sight too quickly of possible alternatives? That's an error I've detected in you before.
Not this time, Mr. Holmes, I assure you. And you'll have to agree when you've spoken to Lady Brackenstall.
And I hope the conversation will be brief. Miss Mary's already been questioned long enough.
Mr. Holmes, this is the lady's maid, Teresa Rose.
That's right.
She needs rest, sir, and it's my duty to see she gets it.
Of course, we'll be as quick and gentle.
But I suppose you'd better come in. Wipe your feet, please, and follow me.